Let's queer up politics. Ron DeSantis suffers another loss at the hands of Florida's first gay Latino lawmaker. Anti-gay Governor Ron DeSantis often touts his record during the pandemic, even though it's largely a myth. Florida ranks 4th in the country in total deaths behind California, Texas, and New York, and in deaths per capita, Florida ranks 22nd. Now, after 2 years of denying that detailed COVID-19 data relating to 2021 infections and vaccines existed, and then being forced by a court to turn it over, Governor Ron DeSantis and the Florida Department of Health have agreed to a settlement that will require the state to disclose coronavirus data on its website and pay attorney fees for attempting to circumvent state public records law. The settlement, announced by the Florida Center for Government Accountability, a nonprofit public records watchdog that sued the state on behalf of former state rep Carlos Guillermo Smith, requires the department to publish detailed COVID-19 data on the Florida Department of Health website and pay $152,250 in legal fees to attorneys representing FLCJA and Smith. Florida's first out gay Latino legislator, Smith, first took office months after the Pulse nightclub shooting and is now running for state senate. First of all, can we all just take a moment and revel in the shaming of Governor Death Sentence? I mean, just
DeSantis,
breathe it in.
Disaster.
Enjoy the pleasant floral scent. Second, Carlos Guillermo Smith, you have my vote.
I think, it highlights, like, I forget the exact saying, but, I'm losing my train of thought, but like having stuff become public is the best antiseptic to things that should not be happening.
No, right.
And, it's good for the former lawmaker for doing this.
Like, as someone with a master's in epidemiology, I can tell you that it was a complete public health disaster what happened here in Florida. So much misinformation, so many deaths, so many things that could have been prevented if we had a better leader. And it was atrocious. Like,
and the fact that he did it for politics makes it more offensive.
And he claims that one of his, victories, somehow he's turned this around to make it one of his, standards for his campaign. He should be ashamed of what he did. I mean, didn't he fire that poor woman? Wasn't she in the Tampa Bay area that was fighting against this and to publish his data? During one of the worst things that had happened in public health in this country in years, and he was actually trying to hide these facts.
oh yeah.
I mean, it's shameful.
There was data that came out because I was listening to this story earlier on the news, and the belief is that those that were 65 and older were at the highest risk of dying from COVID. But when they see the data that came out, it turned out it wasn't that group that was dying at the highest numbers. It was other groups in other geographic areas, and they weren't being addressed as you're at a higher risk, so take on additional precautions, because the data was never released to let people make educated decisions. We believed in certain areas that we weren't as susceptible, so people were a little bit more careless, and if the data would have made a difference in people's lives.
I have most of my extended family is on the west coast of Florida, so Bradenton, Fort Myers, and of course you were terrified for all of your loved ones during the pandemic because we didn't know what was happening, especially at the beginning, and to see them living in a place where you had all of this, as you were just saying, all of this misinformation and just lack of regard, and the fact that the response was motivated by political aspirations is just beyond appalling. Just like people that I hear about, and like I have a lot of friends here too. I mean, it was just it was just sickening to hear some of what was going on.
And now picture him on the world stage as trying to be the president of the United States, but taking that and then multiplying it by 50.
Yeah. And I think the saddest part about it was that it wasn't like people like Ron DeSantis that were mostly affected. It was the gay community who had HIV, who literally were susceptible to dying from COVID. It was the Black community who literally didn't have the precautions. It was the vulnerable, marginalized communities here in Florida that were being mostly impacted by this pandemic. And shame on you, Ron DeSantis, for doing that.
And knowing because he knew he was going to run for president. So this was with all that intention, knowing that, you know, he was going to mobilize this base, you know, of crazy Republicans, that now he uses this as, look, I'm the one fighting for you. I'm the one that is representing you. I'm going to be more Trumper than Trump.
Well, his presidential aspirations have not gone the way that he would have liked. So perhaps there's a silver lining.
And let me tell you, it's no wonder we have laws like the gender affirming like ban on like healthcare in youth, and it's no wonder we have laws that is now like allowing doctors to discriminate based on LGBT status. There's no surprise here, because we have one of the most authoritarian, like pretty much dictator leader in this country.
Yeah.
Keep watching the only television news in the world from our LGBTQ plus community, and stay informed on everything that is important for and about our diverse LGBTQ plus community.